So let me briefly introduce myself. I'm a professor at KOC University. Prior to that, I worked for a startup company in US, and prior to that, I was doing my PhD. And I'm in electrical engineering. Research area is in the optics, MEMS, sensors. So what I do a little bit different than most academics is I have about 50 patents, and I work a lot with companies. So all have been licensed to various companies. But in recent years, I decided maybe I should be more involved in the commercialization of them. So have a number of startups, 3-4 startups in the last few years. And that's my short story. And I will I was planning to introduce them, but maybe better for you to introduce yourself briefly. Then we can go to the question session.
Thank you, Hakan. Hi, my name is Ercil. I've also been an academician for 26 years. Before that, electrical engineering and math, then PhD in applied math from Brown, and I worked at GM Research Labs for 5 years. Then came to Turkey, 13 years at Boğaziçi University, 13 years at Sabancı University. And in the meantime, I started a company called Vistec, which I sold to a German company, Vision, in 2013. Then I started a new company, Vispera, and I guess we'll talk about that a little bit today.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, my name is Klaus. I'm head of the research group on management and innovative value creation concepts at University in Marburg in Germany. I do primarily research on business model innovation, so I think that's one of the main reasons why I'm here today. And as compared to many others here, I'm not focusing on engineering and Industry 4.0 topics, but more general on the phenomenon of digitalization. I got my PhD in Hamburg before. I studied industrial engineering at University of Kassel, so I have some engineering background, and I also worked for a few companies, but since I moved to academia, I did not found any companies and I don't have any patents, so I'm purely academic. Business model innovation is kind of a buzzword in recent years. So we did a quick analysis recently where we searched for the usage of the term business model and business model innovation in practitioner-oriented journals in Germany. And what we found is that until the 2000s, there was almost nothing. And since then, the numbers increased significantly, and we are now like at a level of about 2,000 mentions in the top 5 practitioner-oriented journals. So it makes sense to think about what does it mean. And our perception on what a business model is that it is an activity system which covers the holistic picture of the company, in which various elements are linked together in a way that they mutually enforce each other. And I think this is the important thing, that if we think about business models, it's not enough to think about production, it's not enough to think about new products or innovation in more traditional ways, but you need to think about what does it mean if we change one element of this activity system, what does it mean for the other elements as well, to conceptualize or design a system which is working quite well, like a machine in which every part enforces the other. And I would say, if you think about business models, you have to have in mind that it consists of 3 elements mainly. The first is a business model has to have a value proposition. So every firm has something to offer, some markets to address, some customer segments to address. The second is the value creation aspect. So the value which is delivered to the customer has to be generated within the firm. So regarding this, you need to have manufacturing processes, you need to be able to utilize activities and capabilities to create that value for the customer. And the third aspect is a value capture domain. So you need to have a revenue model. You need to make money out of this well-functioning system. And if we talk about business model innovation, we could think about changes in these system parameters that change the logic of the firm. And although changes can take place in each of these domains, they will lead, or they will make changes in the other areas necessary as well.
On the innovation side, so because that's a big buzzword in general. In Turkey, we didn't have innovation directörü, innovation director of innovation before, but now many companies seem to have one, and startups try to innovate every day in different means, not just producing technology, but within itself also. They try to be innovative and try to define it. So can you have been on that side for quite a long time. Can you define what's innovation and
Okay.
What companies try to do in this area?
Yeah, I guess when the word innovation came, people confused it with invention, but it's not the same. Innovation, as I define it, is the process of translating an idea or an invention into a product or a service that creates value, and the customers are willing to pay for it. That's sort of my simple definition. So it is not necessarily a huge invention that is patented, etc., but it's the whole process. It's process plus the product. So you could talk about innovative products, or you could talk about the innovation process where you create that product, or you can talk about the management changes in the management structure, or changes in the business model. But it's the whole process and the final endpoint that translates an idea into a value-added product or service. So it could be actually a value added to the company, or value added to the market, or value added to the country. So it doesn't have to be worldwide value added.
What do you mean by open innovation?
Open innovation, I mean, generally what companies observed is that you can hire the best engineers worldwide, and you can build a very nice R&D department, but you will only have very, very few of the experts worldwide within your company, and there are many more outside. So if I open my innovation process by...
It used to be like all secrets, right? So why should people open up more? It used to be, keep it secret.
This is actually a difficult question. If you think about Tesla, they opened their patents to the public, and they said, okay, we're not going to sue you if you use our technology, because they realized that they might learn more from experts out there if they make their knowledge available to them. And this might not apply to every industry, but I think for them it paid off, and for others as well. And recently I had a workshop with also engineering companies, and they said they had a problem they wanted to solve, and it took them years to think about it, and the engineers were working on it, and then they used crowdsourcing at the end. So they just said, give it a try, and they were impressed how many good ideas they got within like a matter of days, and their problem was solved after a few months.
By opening to public, right? So does this apply to startups, open innovation?
Definitely, actually, more than big companies. Startups survive on open innovation pretty much.
What do you do in terms of open innovation and opening things that you have done to public?
Okay, well, let me tell you a little about what we do first to put it in context. My company, Vispera, my previous company, Vistec, was in machine vision, manufacturing automation, quality inspection type of things. And the new company, Vispera, is a computer vision and machine learning company that is focused in retail domain. So what we do is looking at the shelf in stores, there are lots of problems like stock out. which is a $1.1 trillion problem worldwide. If an item is not on the shelf, you cannot sell it. And other things are like planogram compliance. Planogram is how the items are displayed on the shelf, which item is on which shelf and what it is next to and what it is not next to, etc. So complying with planogram, again, affects the revenue by up to 20-25%. And so we monitor those automatically by taking pictures of the shelves and processing those. And our output is the reports. So we we summarize those findings and hopefully turn them into actionable items. Right now, actually, we're in the first stage, development stage, so we're not really opening our data to the public or opening our methods to the public, but we are using open resources that other people have provided. So in our case, it's one-sided right now. But in the future, we would like to have people access to our data, and we want to go together with other companies to open innovation.
Okay.
What do you think about sustainability and the relation with the new business models? Global sustainability and new business models.
I can say that research-wise, sustainable business models are a hot topic. Many colleagues of mine are working on this, and I think if we think about business models as holistic structures which have to be built in a way that they are self-sustaining, it enables firms to create those structures which are sustainable or even enable social responsibility to a greater degree as like the traditional capitalist companies. So for instance, those initiatives giving micro loans to startups in emerging countries, of Muhammad Yunus, who won the Nobel Prize for this concept. It's a self-sustaining business model, but it works slightly different than like the typical banks. But it's a structure which is self-sustaining. And there are other concepts as well. And I would say also within society, I see kind of a trend that people want to behave sustainable. Not all of them, but some of them. I see it among my students. The requests for writing a thesis in the area of social, sustainable business models were quite many in recent years. And people, the students approach me because they are interested in this topic and they want to do good as well. And I think business models enable making money, but also behaving sustainable, reducing waste, and also doing good at the same time.
Related to this, and maybe this will be our last round, how with the new business models she asked, and how should companies stay ahead, and where is the technology heading us?
Okay. Before I go into that, let me add one more thing to the previous question. I think to achieve sustainability, we need to solve several problems that is coming with this big data and IoT, etc. Those are security, liability, and IP rights. For example, who owns the data? If you implant a medical device into a patient's body, who owns that data? Is it the manufacturer of the device? Is it the patient? Is it the caretaker who has done the implementation?
Also ethics issue, yeah?
So yeah, there are lots of issues that we have to solve before we can really talk about sustainable long-term models. So you're saying what kind of...
How do we stay ahead to remain sustainable, I guess, and where is technology heading us?
Well, I guess 4 big technologies that are affecting most companies and us too is IoT, big data, cloud, and advances in machine learning. So those are really the technological changes that is affecting many of us. And the companies, we're running a race where there's no finish line. So to keep ahead with all these changes, very dynamic changes, we have to be following the technology very closely, of course, and we have to be thinking about all these, what kind of value that we will add. So, for example, one things that you can distinguish yourself from others might be technological distinguishability, what kind of new technology that you develop that is going to put you ahead of competitors. Another might be what kind of data you have access to. So data itself is also a value. For example, in our case, in retail, we're collecting lots of data about different brands, different retailers. Can we do something with that data itself? The data itself is a value in addition to the technology that we create. Another might be creating platforms. We talked about platforms where, since we talked about integration and said that's a big issue, creating a platform might be one way of staying ahead, where other companies will connect your platform and use it. Or another might be creating end-to-end solutions, so hardware, software, maintenance, etc., to provide full services. So these are different ways I could think of to stay ahead.
Excellent, yes, okay.